In the news this week, Liberal Party under siege as the Safe School program faced content adjustments.
Who's to blame? Parliamentary report found the DCP failed to heed warning signs before a 15-year-old father murdered his baby boy.
This is the Evening News.
Good evening. The Safe School program debate continues in Australia after the federal government announced changes to LGBTI materials following a review triggered by Conservative MPs. Opposition leader Bill Shorten slammed the move and accused the government of giving into the bullies.
After a review triggered by the federal Conservative MPs, the Turnbull government will remove the LGBTI material in the Safe School program and allow parents' participation. Education Minister Simon Birmingham has defended the decision and said the materials will be used in high school. It's a move that triggered criticism from Labor.
Mr Turnbull's learning a very old lesson right now. When you give in to a bully, they come back wanting more.
Meanwhile, State Greens MP stressed that the Safe School program is needed to prevent bullying. She also believes teachers should have the right to raise the issue in the classrooms.
Look, Safe Schools was actually reviewed by an educational expert from UWA, and he said that the content was appropriate.
However, other Conservative groups believe the program is poorly targeted.
You can be a girl one day and a boy the next day. It's okay for the boys to use the girls' change rooms. All these things are just too confusing for 11, 12, 13-year-old kids. They just don't need that sort of confusion.
Ryan Sharman, WAMN News.
The state government has tabled a report on child protection services after a baby was murdered by his 15-year-old father in Bunbury. The Parliamentary Committee's report found the teenage father's behaviour has demonstrated multiple red flags, but the department failed to monitor him.
It was a tragic and senseless death of a baby that could have been prevented. A teenage father fatally injuring his 1-month-old son while alone with the baby in hospital. The 15-year-old fractured the baby's skull, hitting it twice while alone at Bunbury Hospital, the baby dying from its injuries a week later. The teenager was sentenced to 10 years jail over the death, but his family are confused how the death happened. A report released this week in Parliament revealed the death could have been avoided.
You know, alarm bells should have been ringing all the way along. They should have known that this teenager had a record.
It states his unstable background, violence, substance abuse and transience were serious red flags. It also said he was left unsupervised with the baby, despite evidence to the Department of Child Protection revealing the risk.
The planning around that process with the child, with the parents, etc., was considered to be adequate at the time, but it is obvious from the outcome that more should have been or could have been done.
The mother of the teenager says she questions the level of care the state has given her son over the past few years. But while Mental Health Minister Helen Morton says she's saddened by the baby's death, she wouldn't say whether she'd apologise for letting her down. Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
Fairfax media journalists carried out major strikes as the ailing company announced another round of savage cuts. It's reported that more than 120 editorial positions will go as a result of downsizing. The MEAA denounced the cuts with protests, but Fairfax CEO said the reform is part of the plan to secure high-quality journalism in a competitive environment.
They almost seem to believe that fewer staff is actually going to deliver better outcomes. It's become this kind of perverse reverse mentality where, you know, efficiency is producing higher quality journalism, but it can't forever be done by fewer and fewer people.
WA Labor has endorsed Lisa O'Malley as the contender for the seat of Bicton in the upcoming election. The party emphasised it'll be focusing their election campaign on unemployment, transport congestion and the selling of public assets such as Fremantle Port. Meanwhile, the Liberals are yet to endorse a candidate to compete for the seat as Dean Nalder and Matt Taylor fight for the seat of Bateman.
Community is absolutely 100% at the heart of what I do and who I am and why I'm running. And I think this is the next step, quite frankly, in that process.
The key suspect in last year's Paris attacks, in which 130 people died, has reportedly been detained. Suspect Salah Abdeslam was arrested by police only 10 kilometres from where the EU-Turkey summit was being held. It was reported that Abdeslam was wounded in the leg as police conducted anti-terror raids in Forest, a suburb in the city of Brussels.
US Secretary of State John Kerry says the Islamic State is guilty of genocide and is vowing to stop the crime. Mr. Kerry also says ISIS is responsible for crimes against humanity. ISIS has increased its presence in northern Iraq and Libya, executing Christians and selling girls into sexual slavery.
Daesh is genocidal by self-proclamation, by ideology, and by actions in what it says, what it believes, and what it does.
And finally tonight, running around the CBD in a duck suit sounds like a wacky thing to do, but more than 50 citizens took part in this year's Perth Duck Run for a good cause. Meanwhile, 10,000 bathtub rubber ducks were also released into the Claysbrook Cove for the annual floating competition. All the funds raised at the Duck Derby will be donated to Channel 7's telethon.
Rotary are fantastic at coming up with novel fundraising events, and this is Rotary Harrison's. This is the 6th duck race, and it's just something novel, something fun for people to do.
So Taylor, how did you find it so far?
It's been really good. I'm really glad to be here, and I will be back next Sunday. In the meantime, you can follow the latest news on our website and Facebook.
Current affairs program Western Perspective will return next Sunday, but until then, from the two of us, good night.
Good night.